backfield. The team they played against, the Los Angeles Chargers, wow, right? The offensive line looked amazing, and Justin Herbert did not. He looked regular with this receiving core, but this backfield, I was really high on Gus Edwards getting first opportunity. He was the nominal starter, but it was JK Dobbins in the second half who erupted and looked the part, man. He looked quick coming off the Achilles. I think that was the biggest concern for most people. It was, what does he look like coming off of this injury? And can he replicate what he looked like in the past for the Ravens? This is a guy we were taking as a top 20 back in fantasy before he got hurt. Now, I don't know the staying power of JK Dobbins, what that looks like. And who knows if Gus Edwards can look better than he did in week 1. But it's clear and obvious that JK Dobbins is a priority pickup for leagues that are probably a little bit more shallow. But also, if you have JK Dobbins, this now becomes a flex-worthy player. Where are you at on this backfield? Because JK did have 10 carries. Gus led in carries. JK just looked the part. You could tell when you were watching.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looked the part. And I know people will say he had that one run, but even if you take out that one run, he's still, I want to say, had 9 carries for 70-some yards, which is still really good. Better than Gus. Now, obviously, we keep saying it week 1, but it is impressive because I basically wrote him off coming off this Achilles. Like we don't see anybody coming off the Achilles injury. So it is, and I'm happy for him because the dude has had the worst luck, really, of anybody I can think of. It's just been horrible for him. So, I mean, I hope it continues, and I really do hope that he ends up balling out. But once again, it is just 1 week. If he is available on the waivers, though, he would be my priority target, my number 1 target, just because if he does end up looking like this and is able to break off big runs and look like the player that we thought he could have been, then absolutely, like, this is a guy that I would want to roster going forward. And I think of like everybody on the waiver wire this week, he offers the highest upside of anybody that's available. So I don't want to just, crown him as the RB1 of this offense just yet, but it was definitely very, very exciting to see him perform so well coming off the injury and really in the backfield that was kind of in limbo this offseason. We weren't quite sure how it's going to play out. So it looks good.
Yeah, we do have to dial in it's one game, right? Like, because there's games where players play well, there's games where players play bad. And obviously 11 carries to Gus Edwards. It means both of these guys were viewed equally coming into the year. JK definitely took more advantage of it, but it is a wait-and-see approach, right? Harbaugh might say, hey, Gus is playing well this game, we get him in there. JK's playing well this game, let's get him in there. So I don't want to, like, if I'm spending fab this week, I'm not blowing the budget on JK Dobbins, even though he's the guy outside of maybe Jordan Mason that has the most potential here in the short term, I would say. Like, he is the player that offers, if he sticks, he's a weekly RB3, maybe RB2 for your team, depending on your league size. So I agree with you there. Are you wasting a number 1 waiver priority on him? And are you spending more than 20% of your fab budget on him?
Probably, yeah. I would, just because of the potential. And like, there's been times in the past where I haven't done this and I've hated myself for it because you end up missing on these guys. So I personally would, just because the potential. Now, maybe he doesn't reach that, and I'm okay with that because I don't think that there's really anybody else. You could say Jordan Mason, and I'm sure we'll talk about him in a little bit. But I don't think that there's really anybody else this week. I'm sure next week maybe there will be somebody else, but then you'll have guys waste their fab and on other guys and waste their priorities. So I would, if I had how much fab I would do, honestly, I'd probably do about 30%. I would do about 30%. And the reason being is just because I really do believe if this is going, I know it's only week 1, but if this is going to be the guy, and we know what the potential is with JK, it's just the injuries have always derailed him. Yeah, he's coming off the Achilles, but I mean, this was also really, really good week 1. If he ends up seeing kind of that potential, I do think that there's a lot of upside. And also because he is this team's preferred receiving back. Like, he was out there on the receiving down. So if he ends up overtaking the rushing role, he already has the receiving role unlocked and a potential bell cow. I'm not saying that's going to happen after week 1, but there's always that potential that I'm okay with spending that fab.
I think it's valid though. The injury concerns are valid too. And,
Yeah.
and if you have some
I think
concerns
it's
about him
risky.
getting re-injured, like there's a real possibility that he could get. I don't wish this on him, especially for a guy that's had to work through so much in his career. But he's an injury-prone player, and this just it's something to note, especially when budget is so much more valuable as the season goes on. So I hear you, and it's a player that could be a regular starter for you if things pan out. But there is a lot to there. This is a risky player. Do not forget,
and kind of
player.
Absolutely, and kind of what you talked about earlier too. This offensive line looks good. They look good.
They look
really good. So there's going to be a team that's going to be a very run-heavy team. So if he does, not saying, obviously if he does, it could be a player that really could be a weekly staple for your team.